Story: The story of Charan. The story of Charan, born 400 years ago, proves that stories of love, strength, truth and sacrifice do not only appear in ancient Eastern stories. The story has the fresh, sweet flavor of yesterday's romance, despite the rather strange setting. During the reign of Korean King Chengzong (1488–1495), there was a famous place in Pyongan named Charan. She is extremely beautiful, her songs and dances bring joy to viewers. Not only that, her knowledge of history and rituals is very profound. She was the most outstanding of the geishas and also the most famous. At this time, Governor Pyongan had a son who was only 16. He had a face as beautiful as a painting. Despite his young age, he was fluent in Chinese and was an excellent student. Not only that, he also had extremely refined literary taste, so much so that every stroke he put to pen was praised by outsiders. He was called Kidong, or young man. On his birthday that year, his father invited all the politicians and other important figures along with a parade and a dozen dancing girls to wish his son good health. His father ordered the leader of the dancing troupe to choose the most beautiful person to dance with Kidong. In just a moment, Charan was called up, a girl who possessed both appearance and knowledge, and was about the same age as the governor's son. They stepped out, held each other's hands and danced like a pair of charming fairies, as graceful as willow trees, as light and fleeting as swallows in the spring. Everyone who sees them is fascinated. The governor was also very pleased. He called Charan back, allowed her to sit on a high platform to participate in the party, gave her a silk gift and ordered that from now on she would be the special dancer to attend the parties. His son's party. After that birthday, they quickly became friends. They are each other's world. More than all the wonderful stories in history that they heard, the love between them was more beautiful than anything. The governor's term at that time lasted another 6 years, during which time they were always there. Back to the north. At the end of the day, the governor and his wife were both extremely worried about the separation of their son and Charan. If they forced the two to separate, they feared their son would die with a broken heart. But if they brought her along, but did not marry her, it would affect the son's reputation. They couldn't decide, so they left the decision to Kidong and called him over. Even a father cannot arbitrarily decide his son's love for a young woman. We should what to do? I love Charan so much that it will be difficult for us to separate, but sleeping with a dancer before getting married is not very good. It will affect my future marriage and career prospects. However, having a second wife is a common custom in North Korea and something the whole world agrees with. Do as you wish. The boy replied, it's not awkward at all, when she is in front of you. Of course, she is everything. But when you have to start building your career, she will be like a worn pair of shoes, having to be put aside. So there is nothing to worry about. Parents. Both the governor and his wife were extremely happy, thinking that he had become a true man with vision. When the time came, Charan cried in such bitterness and pain that the people around her did not dare to look at her. Only her son did not show any emotion at all. He loved her for 6 years. But he had never been away from her for even a day, so he didn't understand the meaning of that goodbye, and also didn't know how it felt to be apart. The governor returned to Seoul to discuss business with the Chief Justice and him. Boy. In less than a day, thoughts about love seemed to haunt Kidong's mind. even though he had never expressed it through words or actions. After finishing his work, the father ordered his son and his other friends to go to that monastery to study. They went there, and one night, while everyone was sleeping, the thief sneaked out into the yard. It was winter at that time, with frost and white snow covering everything and a cold, clear moon. The mountains in the distance were deep and the world was filled with a silent night, only a small noise could be heard. He looked up at the moon with a depressed mood. He wanted to meet Charan so much that he couldn't control himself anymore. That very night, he decided to depart alone to the faraway Pyongyang. He wore a fur outfit, a thick cloak, a leather belt, and heavy shoes. Less than 10 li, his feet were blistered from the cold. He had to stop by a nearby village to change his shoes into a pair of straw sandals, and exchange his luxurious hood for an ordinary servant's hat. He walked without stopping, praying with every step. He was extremely hungry, and as night came, the cold became even more cruel. He was originally the son of a rich man, lived in luxury, ate delicious food and never stepped more than a few meters away from the gate. Now before him was an arduous journey of several hundred miles, stumbling through the snow. Starving and freezing to death, he had never known what it was like to endure. His clothes were gradually torn by the hurricane and his handsome face was eroded until he looked like a goblin. He kept going, little by little, day by day, until finally, until a whole month had passed, he reached Pyongyang. He dragged his body straight to Charan's house and knocked on the door. But she was no longer there. There, the small house only had a hard-working old woman, Charan's mother. She did not recognize the handsome governor's son until he introduced himself. He told her about the distance he had overcome to get here. But instead of being satisfied, the other mother was extremely angry. "My daughter is now with the new governor's son. I haven't even seen her for several months. No matter how hard you tried, it didn't work. Too late." She didn't invite him into the house, even for a moment, which was so cold. He thought. He came here to find Charan, but she was not there and he could not return. Then at this moment, a thought flashed through his head. He remembered a scribe who had served his father's side, a man who was almost sentenced to death for the crime he committed if it weren't for his request. He continued walking on his straw sandals to the servant's house. After recognizing Qidong, he invited him into the most luxurious room and treated him warmly. A few days later, he told his main purpose of coming here to the servant. He replied, "It will be quite difficult to meet her alone, but if you only want to see her face to face, I think I can do it. Do you agree? At the time of snowfall, there will be a team of servants sent into the inner palace courtyard to sweep the snow, and fortunately, the scribe can manage this job. And then, you will be able to catch a glimpse of Charan as she sits in the hill kiosk." The new governor's son sat by the window with Charan serving wine beside him in the hill kiosk. Qidong held a broom and quietly followed the group of servants into the yard, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not see through the thin curtain covering the window. All the servants quickly picked up brooms and swept, only he looked down at his feet in confusion, not knowing how to sweep. The governor's son quickly noticed the clumsy, dazed figure in the middle of the yard, laughed and called Charan to come watch with him. She lifted the curtain, glanced past the skinny man in the middle of the yard, then lowered her eyes and quietly walked back to her room, leaving behind a sad and disappointed Qidong. Charan is a smart girl, with just the first look she knew. I can recognize the person who has been by my side for 6 years. She returned to her room and cried. She asked the new governor's son to return to her mother's side. Without any doubt, he agreed to take her home. Returning home, she immediately ran to her mother, sobbing, "Qidong has come. I have seen you. You have come, right? Please tell me. I'm going, Mom." The mother replied, "He came, but I said you're in Yamen. He'll never be able to see you again. And now I don't know where he is." Charan burst into tears. "As I thought, we will never be able to be apart. At 16, we were chosen to dance together, and I believe it was God's will. We live in each other's world, there won't be any love like that anymore. Even if you forget and abandon me, I will still never be able to leave you. The governor is the same, he accepts me as his son's wife and has never once despised my background. It's all like a heavenly dream. I have seen many noble officials and politicians in the capital, but no one like Qidong. He is special. I have to find him. Although he will probably forget her again." The old mother looked at her daughter, and the two hugged each other and cried. That night, they prepared things to help Charan escape from Pyongyang. Back to the story, the morning after when he woke up, everyone in the monastery could not find Qidong, and after a period of searching, even his parents thought he was dead and they burned all his personal belongings as a way of burial. Pyongyang, the new governor's son, after not seeing Charan anywhere, sent someone to capture her mother, but he could not change anything, so he let her go. Charan went to live in a small village and met his 5-year-old son again. At the age of 16, even though at this time he was so emaciated that he was almost unrecognizable. They both hugged each other. The hug seemed to take them back to the innocent days of the past, when not many incidents had happened yet. But they know they cannot live in this village forever. Charan said, "I have a plan that will make us start a new life, serving your parents and maybe once again looking the world in the eye. Gender. Do you agree? It's the baccalaureate exam. I don't know any other way. And I know that you will understand what I mean. That should be enough to help us. But how can we get the books we need? Let me worry about that." From that day on, Charan went everywhere to ask for books, but no one in the village had them. And luckily, a merchant brought a stack of books to sell to the villagers as wallpaper. Charan was able to save the pile of books in time. Qidong was extremely happy. This is all we need to prepare. Every night, they lit a small candle next to the worn-out table. He attentively read a book, and she attentively looked at him, her hand twisting the silk thread. Whenever Qidong showed any signs of boredom, she was the one who urged him to continue his studies, and they continued like that for 2 long years. From the beginning, he was a highly gifted student, and he continued to improve day by day. He was a talented student. He was a refined writer and a master of literature, so it was not surprising that in that year's Kwago exam, he achieved first place. When his name was announced, the general who was his father at that time was standing behind the king, suddenly burst into tears. "That is my son, Your Majesty. He has disappeared for 3 years. He disappeared while being taken to study at the monastery. Everyone thought he was dead. We have buried its belongings, but deep down we still hope that one day it will return. This is my son's handwriting, there can be no mistake. The king was extremely surprised, immediately called Qidong and asked the reason for his disappearance for 3 years. "I was once an innocent person. You are so hateful, you leave your parents, you break all the rules of filial piety, please punish me." The king replied, "There is no law that can be hidden from you, tell me everything. Go." Qidong told his story to the king. All the mandarins at that time were standing next to listen. The king sighed, "Your son has repented. And we can't blame him for loving a woman. He won the first prize and will now be a member of the council." The king continued, "Charan, who has accompanied you through the hardships of the countryside, is no ordinary woman. Her plans seem to come from the hands of a master strategist. She is not just a dancer. She will become your legal wife. She will have the same status as you. Let her children and grandchildren hold the highest positions in the kingdom." Charan was carried on a palanquin, and they announced their marriage at the most bustling festival of that year. The two later had 2 sons. And they all hold high positions in the kingdom. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.